Let me ask you something real quick. You ever walk through Walmart and feel completely overwhelmed? Like you know you should be prepping, you know something's coming, whether it's a storm, a job loss, a grid failure, whatever, but you got $15 in your pocket and 100 different survival experts online telling you to spend $400 on a go bag that looks like it belongs to a Navy SEAL? Yeah, I've been there. And here's what nobody tells you, the people selling you those $400 kits. A lot of them need you to believe that cheap doesn't work. Because if you figured out what I'm about to show you, you'd never buy their course, their kit, or their affiliate linked essential gear again. So today, I'm going to show you the $15 Walmart strategy, not a $15 item, a $15 system. A real, functional, tested approach that experienced preppers quietly use themselves while publicly acting like budget prepping is for amateurs. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, the way you walk through Walmart is going to change permanently. First, let me tell you why $15 specifically, and why Walmart specifically. Most prepping content online is built around one invisible assumption that you have money and time. Big stockpile, dedicated storage room, a chest freezer in the garage, a truck to haul supplies. But the actual reality for most people watching this? You're living paycheck to paycheck, maybe in an apartment, maybe with a family to feed right now, not just in an emergency. You don't have $300 to dump on freeze-dried food buckets. You have this week's grocery budget, and you're trying to stretch it. That's not a weakness. That's the actual starting point for 70% of Americans right now, and the prepping community almost never speaks to you directly. Walmart isn't glamorous. I get it. The prepping world loves to romanticize small tactical shops and specialty survival brands. But Walmart exists in almost every county in the United States. If you're in a rural area, Walmart might literally be the only major retail option within 40 miles. And in a crisis when specialty stores are already sold out, Walmart shelves are restocked more aggressively than almost anywhere else because of their supply chain infrastructure. So $15 at Walmart isn't a compromise. It's actually a strategic choice. Now here's the key insight most people miss prepping isn't about having the most stuff. It's about solving specific problems before they become emergencies. And most of the problems that kill people in disasters, dehydration, hypothermia, infection, inability to communicate, inability to cook food, have $2 and $3 solutions sitting on Walmart shelves right now that people walk past every single day. The secret isn't a product, it's a mindset shift about what a solution actually needs to look like. Let me be straight with you about something uncomfortable. The experienced prepper community, and I'm generalizing here, not attacking individuals, has a gatekeeping problem, and some of it is intentional. There's a certain status that comes with having the right gear, the right brand, the right system. And when someone new shows up asking, "Can I do this on $15?" the response is almost always some version of, "You get what you pay for," or "cheap gear fails when you need it most," or the classic "this isn't the hobby to cut corners on." And look, some of that is true. A $3 lighter might fail in wet conditions. A cheap emergency blanket might tear. That's real. But here's what they're not telling you. A $3 lighter that works 80% of the time is infinitely more useful than a $40 fire starting kit you never bought. An emergency blanket that tears under rough use still kept someone warm for 6 hours in a car during a snowstorm. The failure scenarios they describe are edge cases. The scenario you actually need to survive? It's probably simpler than that. The psychology works like this. They raise the stakes so high, make the gear list so long and so expensive that you feel like you can't even start unless you're all in. And when you can't go all in, you go nowhere. You stay unprepared. And that benefits the people selling the expensive stuff. Don't fall for it. The $15 Walmart strategy works because it's built on a completely different philosophy. One problem, one solution, $1 at a time. You're not trying to be ready for everything on day one. You're solving your single highest risk problem this week, then the next one next week. And over time, without ever spending more than $15 in a single trip, you build something real. Before I give you specific products, I need to give you the framework, because the framework is what makes the $15 actually work. Without the framework, you're just buying random stuff and calling it prepping. The framework is called WWs, and I made that acronym up, so don't go Googling it, but the concept is solid. It stands for water, warmth, health, communication, sustenance. Every dollar you spend in that Walmart has to map to one of those 5 categories. If it doesn't, put it back. This isn't about buying cool survival stuff. Let me break each one down briefly, and in the next parts of this video, I'll go much deeper on the specific products and exactly how to use them. Water, the human body, dies from dehydration faster than almost anything else. 3 days without water. In a disaster where municipal water is contaminated or cut off, most people have nothing, and the solution doesn't require a $200 filter system. There are options in the camping aisle and even the baby section of Walmart that address this for under $3. Warmth hypothermia kills in conditions most people think are survivable. 60 degrees Fahrenheit with wet clothing and wind? Dangerous. People die in their cars on highways every winter because they didn't have one simple item in their back seat. One item costs $1.88 at Walmart. I'll show you exactly what it is. Health, I'm not talking about a full first aid kit. I'm talking about the 2 or 3 things that turn a minor injury into a survivable situation instead of an infected nightmare. Wound care, fever management. That's it. Walmart's pharmacy section and the dollar bins have everything you need. Communication, this one surprises people. When the grid goes down, your phone battery is your most critical resource, not the phone itself. And your ability to receive emergency alerts, weather warnings, evacuation orders can be the difference between getting out and getting stuck. There's a $10 solution for this that most preppers pay $40 for. Sustenance, not a 30-day food supply, not freeze-dried meals. Just enough caloric density to keep you functional for 72 hours without power, without a stove, without refrigeration. There are specific products at Walmart, and I'm not talking about the obvious ones like canned beans that are the highest calorie per dollar ratio you can find in a grocery store, and they're hiding in plain sight. Now you might be wondering, is this actually how real preppers operate behind the scenes? Or is this just a theory? Let me tell you what I've seen and what's documented in disaster response research. After Hurricane Katrina, after the Texas ice storm of 2021, after the California wildfires, the people who made it through without serious suffering weren't the ones with the most gear. They were the ones who had some gear, plus some preparation, plus some calm. The correlation between survival outcomes and gear cost is actually pretty weak. The correlation between survival outcomes and having done anything at all to prepare even small things is very strong. FEMA's own data says that households that have even a basic 72-hour kit survive disasters with significantly less physical and psychological harm than those who have nothing. And a 72-hour kit, the actual functional version, not the overpriced commercial version, sold in a pretty bad cost between $25 and $45 to assemble yourself at Walmart over 3 or 4 weeks. There are also prepper forums, and I've spent a lot of time in them, where you'll find threads that are almost never featured in YouTube content, where experienced preppers talk honestly about what they actually use in real situations. And over again, the items they name are dead simple. Dollar store rain ponchos, Walmart brand emergency candles, a hand crank weather radio they bought years ago for $12, a case of water, and a $4 water purification tablet pack. The expensive gear, a lot of it sits in a bag in a closet. The cheap stuff, it actually gets used, tested, and trusted. Water first. Always water first. The rule of 3 says you can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water. But here's what that statistic doesn't tell you: cognitive impairment from dehydration starts in hours. Decision-making gets worse. Panic sets in faster. Your ability to problem solve during an already stressful emergency drops significantly when you're even mildly dehydrated. So water isn't just about survival. It's about staying mentally sharp when everything around you is falling apart. Here's the problem most people have: they think water storage means buying a bunch of gallon jugs and calling it done. And yeah, water jugs are fine, but what happens when those run out? What happens when you're not at home? What happens when the water source near you is there a river, a stream, a swimming pool, but you don't know if it's safe to drink? That's where these 2 items come in. Item 1, Aquatab's water purification tablets. Find these in the camping section of Walmart, sometimes near the fishing gear. A pack of 30 tablets runs about $6 to $8. Each tablet purifies 1 liter of water, removing bacteria and viruses in about 30 minutes. 30 tablets. 30 liters of drinkable water from any questionable source you find. That's about 8 gallons. For a family of 4 in a 72-hour emergency, you need roughly 6 gallons minimum for drinking alone, and these cover it. In a flat, waterproof credit card-sized package. Now the limitations, because I promised to be straight with you, Aquatabs don't remove heavy metals, sediment, or chemical contamination. If your water source is industrial runoff or floodwater from a chemical plant, tablets alone aren't enough. But for the most common disaster scenarios, boil water advisories, well contamination, bugging out near a natural water source, they work exactly as described. Item 2, 1 case of Walmart brand water 40 pack. I know, you're thinking that's obvious. But here's how most people get this wrong. They buy a case, stick it in a corner, and forget about it. Then 18 months later, there's an emergency. The bottles are expired, yes. Plastic water bottles expire, the plastic leaches into the water over time, and now they're drinking something that tastes like chemicals. The correct approach is what preppers call rotation. You buy a case, you put your newest case in the back, you drink from the front. Every 6 months, the oldest case moves into your regular fridge and gets consumed, and you buy a fresh one. Your emergency supply stays perpetually fresh without ever wasting a drop. 1 case, roughly $5 at Walmart. Combine it with the tablets and you've solved the water problem for $13 to $14 right there. That's your water allocation for 1 trip. Done. Health category, I want to be really specific here because health prepping has a tendency to go one of 2 ways. People either ignore it completely or they try to build a field hospital and spend $200 on gear they don't know how to use. Neither is the right answer. For a $15 budget approach, you're solving for 3 specific scenarios: wound infection, fever management, and basic pain/inflammation. That's it. Those 3 cover 80% of the medical situations you're likely to face in a 72-hour emergency. Item 1, generic brand ibuprofen. Brand 500. Walmart's Equate brand ibuprofen is chemically identical to name brand Advil. I'm not speculating generic drugs in the US must meet the same FDA bioequivalent standards as name brands. A 500 count bottle runs around $8 to $10. Why ibuprofen specifically over acetaminophen? Because ibuprofen handles fever and inflammation. If someone has an injury that's swelling a sprained ankle, a wound with localized swelling, ibuprofen addresses both the pain and the inflammatory response. In a situation where you can't get to a doctor, managing inflammation matters. This bottle will last your household years in a regular rotation. Add it to the kit. Item 2, Wound Care Basics. Walmart store brand first aid section carries separately a large pack of adhesive bandages, a bottle of hydrogen peroxide or isopropyl alcohol, and a tube of triple antibiotic ointment. Together, these 3 items cost about $6 to $8. Here's the thing about wound infection that most people don't take seriously until it's too late in a disaster scenario. A cut that you'd normally shrug off becomes dangerous if you can't access clean water to flush it and antibiotic ointment to prevent infection. The 72-hour window is critical. A wound that's properly cleaned and covered in hour 1 has an extremely low infection rate. A wound that's left dirty for 24 hours in a disaster environment, you're looking at a real problem. Clean it, cover it, apply ointment. That's the protocol. And with these items from Walmart, you can do it correctly. Health category covered for around $15 to $18, and most of these items double as regular household supplies you'd buy anyway. Communication category, this is where I see the biggest gap in most people's prep. And it's also where the gatekeeping I talked about in part 1 is worst, because the prepping community tends to push toward expensive ham radios, satellite communicators, and gear that requires licensing and training to use. You don't need any of that for a basic 72-hour emergency. What you need is 2 things: the ability to receive emergency information and the ability to keep your primary communication device, your phone, alive long enough to matter. Item 1, hand crank emergency weather radio. Walmart typically carries 1 or 2 options in the electronics or camping section. You're looking for anything with NOAA weather band reception and a hand crank charging option. These run between $15 and $25, which is slightly over our strict $15 target, but this is the one item I'd suggest you allocate 2 weeks of budget toward if needed. Here's why it's non-negotiable. NOAA weather radio is the backbone of the U.S. emergency alert system. When there's a tornado warning, a flash flood advisory, an evacuation order, or a civil emergency, that information goes to NOAA first. If your phone is dead and the cellular networks are overwhelmed, which they will be in a major disaster, as everyone tries to call simultaneously, your weather radio still works. It runs on hand crank power, no batteries needed, no grid needed. It receives information when everything else has failed. Item 2, high-capacity power bank Walmart brand or OnRon. Walmart's on-brand power bank 10,000 mAh capacity sells for around $15 to $20. This is another slight budget stretch, but again, worth the 2-week approach. A fully charged 10,000 mAh power bank will charge a modern smartphone roughly 2 to 3 times from dead. In a 72-hour emergency where you're rationing phone use, checking alerts, sending status updates to family, using a GPS map offline, 2 to 3 full charges is the difference between being connected and being completely isolated. Charge this power bank every 3 months. Set a calendar reminder. It does you no good if you pull it out during an emergency and it's been sitting dead for a year. Communication solved. You know what's happening around you. Your phone stays alive. Sustenance category okay. This is the one people think they already have figured out, and almost universally they don't. I'll just eat canned food. That's the most common answer. And canned food is fine, but here's the actual challenge. Most canned food requires a can opener, ideally requires heating, and has a lower calorie density than you think. A can of soup has maybe 250 to 300 calories. An adult in a stressful emergency situation carrying things, moving, managing fear burns significantly more than their usual 2,000 calories. You need dense calories, not just food. Here's what actually works. Item 1 peanut butter hard jar, store brand calorie density, roughly 190 calories per 2 tablespoons. A large 40-ounce jar of Walmart brand peanut butter has approximately 6,000 calories. It requires no cooking, no refrigeration, no can opener, and costs around $5 to $6. For a single adult, that jar alone provides 3 full days of caloric intake at a reduced but functional level. For a family of 4, it covers base calories for about 18 hours, so you need supplemental items. But as the anchor of your food supply, nothing in Walmart beats peanut butter on a calorie per dollar basis. Item 2, plain saltine crackers or Ritz. Carbohydrates provide fast energy and make peanut butter an actual meal rather than a paste you're eating off a spoon. A large box of store brand crackers is around $2 to $3 and provides significant caloric volume. Peanut butter plus crackers, complete macro coverage, no cooking, no refrigeration, no tools. That's your 72-hour food foundation. Item 3, instant oatmeal packets of 10 to 12. These run about $3 at Walmart. If you have any heat source at all, a camp stove, a tea light warming a pot, anything instant oatmeal is one of the highest calorie per ounce shelf-stable foods available. It also has the psychological benefit of feeling like a real meal, which matters more than people acknowledge. Morale during a disaster is a real factor in decision-making and mental resilience. One thing to note, the oatmeal requires hot water ideally, but can be eaten dry or soaked in cold water in an absolute pinch. It won't be pleasant, but the calories are still there. Item 4 manual can opener $1, sometimes less. In the hardware section or kitchenware, if you have canned goods of any kind in your home and your power goes out and you don't have a manual can opener, those cans are decorations. $1 solves this permanently. It's very important for you. I'm going to show you how to store all of this properly because gear in the wrong conditions fails when you need it, and I'm going to walk you through the first 6 hours protocol, meaning the disaster just happened, here's exactly what you do, in what order, using exactly what we just built. That protocol alone has changed how a lot of people think about emergencies. Don't skip it. Let me start with a hard truth. A lot of people who consider themselves prepared have supplies scattered across their house in no particular system. Some stuff in the garage, some in a kitchen cabinet, a flashlight somewhere in the junk drawer, batteries unknown. An emergency blanket still in the shopping bag from 6 months ago. That's not a kit. That's just stuff. In an actual emergency, especially at night, especially with stress hormones flooding your body, especially if there are kids or elderly family members involved, you do not have time to think. You execute. And you can only execute what's already organized, already familiar, and already in one place. Here's the storage system that works within the $15 budget approach. The container you don't need a fancy tactical bag. You don't need a military-grade Pelican case. You need one large, waterproof, lidded plastic storage bin from Walmart, the kind with the snap lock lid. They run about $6 to $8 for a 15 to 18 gallon size. That's it. That's your kit container. Why waterproof lid? Because flooding is one of the most common disaster scenarios. Because a basement or garage where most people store emergency supplies can get damp. Because if you ever need to grab your kit and move fast through rain, your supplies stay dry. Label the outside with a piece of masking tape. Write emergency kit in black marker. Not subtle, not decorative, clear, and obvious. Every adult in your household needs to know what it is and where it is without asking. What goes inside and how don't just dump everything in. Use 1 gallon Ziploc bags Walmart, around $3 for a box that'll last you years to organize by category. Label each bag with a marker, one bag labeled Water Your Aqua Tabs, a folding water container if you have one bag labeled Warmth Your Mylar Blankets, a lighter, your tea lights, one bag labeled Health Your Wound Care items, ibuprofen, any prescription medications you've pre-staged. One bag labeled food, your oatmeal packets, a spoon, your manual can opener, one bag labeled communication, your power bank, charging cables, a written list of important phone numbers. Yes, written on paper. Because if your phone dies completely and you need to borrow someone else's phone to call your sister, do you actually know her number by heart? Most people don't. Write it down. Your weather radio sits on top of everything, easy to grab first. Your peanut butter and crackers live next to the bin. They're too bulky to fit inside neatly, but they're part of the system. Location this matters more than people think. Your kit needs to be in a place that is accessible from multiple points in your home, not buried behind seasonal decorations, and known to every adult and older child in your household. For apartments, a bedroom closet shelf works well, easily reachable, out of daily way, protected from exterior temperature swings. For houses, a central interior closet, not the garage if you can help it. Garages get hot in summer and cold in winter, which degrades certain supplies faster, particularly medications and anything with adhesive. And critically tell your family where it is. Have a 5-minute conversation. Hey, if something happens and I'm not here, the emergency kit is in the hall closet on the top shelf. The weather radio is on top. Start there. That conversation takes 5 minutes and could matter enormously. The rotation schedule every 6 months. Pick a date that's easy to remember, like the first day of daylight saving time changes. You open the kit and do a quick check. Are the water bottles expired? Rotate them. Is the ibuprofen past its date? Replace it. Are the batteries in the weather radio still charged? Test it. Does the power bank still hold charge? Plug it in, top it off. This takes maybe 20 minutes twice a year. That's the maintenance cost of being genuinely prepared.